fantasy football friends, and welcome to Week 4, Episode 4 of the KC and PC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're about a quarter of the way through the season. Hopefully you're doing great. Hopefully you're racking up the wins right now. This week we are going to actually be discussing something that was emailed to us by one of our adoring fans.
You mean mailed to us? You accidentally put an E before you said it.
No, I said what I meant. They emailed it to us.
Why do you keep saying it like that?
Email. What's wrong with how I'm saying it?
What's email?
You know, email on the internet.
What's internet?
Okay, I can't do this right now. Back to the topic. The question is, what do you think of starting multiple players from the same team? Now, to start with, let me just say that I'd hope no one would be crazy enough to fill every single position or slot with the Cleveland Browns players. Okay, that would be insane.
No, insane is not using an envelope and stamp to send mail.
However, a duo on the same team, say quarterback and wide receiver or running back and tight end, that's a different story. Now, to get to the heart of whether this strategy is worth it or not, we have to ask, what's the goal of fantasy football? To start the best players every week, right? So this strategy seems like a cop-out to me, kind of. I mean, very rarely are two guys on the same team going to post the highest scores in their positions for the week. There's usually just not enough yards and touchdowns to go around on the same team. But don't get me wrong, you can definitely win some weeks on the backs of a successful same-team marriage. But NFL teams generally have too many ups and downs, and those down weeks, it's really going to hurt you if you have the same team duo going.
You can't blame them though if the best available receiver is available during the draft and he just happens to be on the same team as your quarterback. You have to do it.
It's tempting, and I'd probably pull the trigger in that situation too. But I think it would come back to bite me.
Come on. You know what they say. If some is good, more is better.
I think that saying applies to everything except for fantasy football rosters and exploring the internet.
What's internet?
Welcome back to the KC and PC Fantasy Football Podcast. It is guest time. And I am pleased to welcome to the show the man, the myth, the legend in his own mind, Harrison Hearn. How's it going, Harry?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Good to see you, sir. Just wanted to ask you a few questions here, kind of get takes on some of the pressing issues of the fantasy football world today. So let's see how this goes. Who is the one player you'd like to get a beer with? Some guy playing in the NFL you want to swig some brew with?
Well, I mean, if I had to sit down with anybody, it'd probably be Peyton Manning.
Why is that?
I mean, he's led me to multiple championships.
There's a humble brag there.
And
okay.
A two-time champion, actually. So, and he was on the team both times. So, you know, it's a lot of history there, and I feel like he'd be he always seems like a pretty cool guy.
Any beer in particular you think he'd be wanting to drink? Is there something you'd order for him that you might expect him to enjoy?
I think he'd be a Sam Adams type of guy because he's, already from the Northeast and everything. So.
And are you going to pay for this outing, or do you expect him to?
I mean, you'd expect him to pay for it, right?
Okay. All right, and if you were the inventor of a kid's toy called the Bubble Screen, what would the toy look like or do you think, this bubble screen toy?
I would feel like it would produce bubbles inside of a box.
Inside of a box. Do you think that'd be fun for kids to have bubbles inside of a box that they get to play with?
I think that would be a toy they would probably abandon pretty quickly, actually.
Abandon immediately. All right, next question. How do you live with yourself?
I don't know.
It's tough.
It is tough.
A day at a time.
I take it one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Usually playing video games to just forget about what's going on.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here about Gangster for Life members. It's kind of who's most likely to do what type of thing. So, which G4L member is most likely to end up in prison, do you think?
That would be Ross, 100%. Probably a drunk, disorderly, peeing out in public type of charge.
Can see that for sure. And which is most likely to win the lottery but lose the ticket?
I would actually probably say that would be Ross as well.
Poor Ross. He's gonna win, but
he would definitely lose that ticket
sure.
almost immediately.
And which member is most likely, do you think, to give away all his worldly possessions?
That's a good question. I feel like Little E would be the type of guy that could easily just walk away from everything he's got and just go on a journey.
Live that hobo life.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, what are your predictions for the Cowboys this year? Record-wise, playoff-wise, what are you thinking? What are you expecting?
I'm expecting them to miss the playoffs and probably a losing record.
Okay, fair enough. And then one other question. Would you be more or less likely to watch a football game in which every player on the field was either concussed the entire game or suffering from CTE? Like, do you think that'd be more enjoyable to watch?
I don't think that would be enjoyable to watch at all. I think it would be more of a touch football type of situation at that point.
Okay. And then last question. When do you give up on a player you drafted? So you just drafted a guy, maybe you love him, maybe you don't. How long do you stick with him if he's kind of sucking?
Well, from my past history, I stuck with Peyton Manning for about 8 weeks longer than I needed to. When I drafted him and kept him on the team for 8 weeks, when I probably should have moved on after about 2 weeks.
Okay.
When you knew there was nothing good going on there.
So you just kept riding the ones that brung you and the ones you love.
That's typically my strategy.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Harry, thank you so much for joining us here, and we wish you good luck this week.
Alrighty, thank you.
Welcome back to the KCMPC Fantasy Football Podcast. This week we've been kind of talking about teammates, so I wanted to do something a little different here and do a teammates quiz. So I'll just kind of ask a question and give you a few seconds to think it over and come up with an answer in your head if you want. And so let's get started with an easy one. Okay, so if you don't get this and you live anywhere in the DFW area, you need to move because this is just too easy. Okay, so the triplets of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys, who were they? Who were the three triplets in the 1990s Dallas Cowboys? And that, of course, is an incredibly easy one. Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, and Emmitt Smith. So, okay, if you didn't get that one, that's pretty sad, but you still have time to get some other ones right. All right, so let's go to some nicknames here, some more nicknames. So Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk helped the St. Louis Rams earn this nickname based on Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. This was another pretty easy one. It is The Greatest Show on Turf, a play on The Greatest Show on Earth from the circus. Okay, now let's get into some teams here. Okay, so this soda-inspired nickname was given to the 1970s Denver Broncos defense. Soda nickname given to the 70s Broncos D. It is not Sunkist, it is not Fanta, it is Orange Crush. I don't know if I've ever had Orange Crush, I'm more of a fan of the other two, but it's a pretty intimidating nickname for a defense. Okay, so this one's another fairly, you should be able to get. So what was the cannibalistic nickname of the Minnesota Vikings defensive line of the 1970s? I'll give you not that it's very much help, but I'll give you a little hint that it's they got its nickname from a 1958 song. And that nickname would be the Purple People Eaters. Purple People Eaters. And in case you were worried, the Vikings didn't actually eat purple people. So that's good news. Sticking with 1970s defensive nicknames, what were the Pittsburgh Steelers called? Another fairly simple one here. It makes sense if you think about it. And that would be the Steel Curtain. Not to be confused with the Man of Steel or anything like that. The Steel Curtain. Okay, these are quite a bit harder, I'd say. So I'll give you a couple of school teammates here. I'm gonna first give you a few clues, and then you try and figure out the two teammates here I'm talking about. So these two teammates went to Helix High School in La Mesa, California. One was ahead of the other one in school years, just by a year, and both were 2004 Heisman finalists. So 2 Heisman finalists in 2004 went to Helix High School in La Mesa, California. Who were they? And one of them, while you're thinking, one of them was a speedster. I mean, that was his, he was the king of the juke, and that would be Reggie Bush, who's out of the league now. But one of them, quarterback for Helix High School, is still in the league, still tossing around the pigskin, just got traded. And that would be Alex Smith. So Alex Smith and Reggie Bush, 2004 Heisman finalists, both went to the same high school. Kind of an interesting fact there. Okay, and here's, I'm going to give you the name of one of these teammates, and you give me the other one. So Osi Umenyiora of the New York Giants went to college with another Pro Bowl defensive end. Osi Umenyiora of the Giants went to the same college as this guy. They're actually pretty good friends. And I'll give you another hint. Brad Pitt starred in a movie about their college. The player that I'm talking about that was teammates with Osi Umenyiora is DeMarcus Ware. Dallas Cowboys fans will, of course, know his name very well. And the movie I was talking about, of course, was Troy. They both went to the college Troy. The movie was meh, Troy the movie, not great, but the school, while those two were there, were probably a pretty good defensive unit. Okay, so here are some more teammates quiz questions. So there have only been 5 wide receiver trios with all 3 of those guys to get 1,000 yards in a season. In 2004, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and who else did it for the Colts? So all 3 of these guys got 1,000 yards. Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and who else? 2004. Back when Peyton was slinging it left and right for the Colts. That would be one of his early favorites, one of the very first white boy slot wide receivers. That would be Brandon Stokely. That name will probably ring a bell. Brandon Stokely, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne. All 3 of them got 1,000 yards in 2004. It's pretty impressive. But they weren't the last trio to do it. The last trio to do it was in 2008 from the Cardinals. It was Larry Fitzgerald, Steve Breston, and who else? So Cardinals, 2008, Larry Fitz, Steve Breston, and who else got 1,000 yards each? And that would be the man who played for the Ravens, the 49ers, and Lions as well, Anquan Boldin, Mr. Anquan Boldin. Okay, and final question here. So the last pair of running backs to each rush for 1,000 yards in a season did so in 2009 for the Carolina Panthers. Can you name the 2 running backs who each rushed for 1,000? And that, kind of a thunder and lightning thing going on here, it was Jonathan Stewart and DeAngelo Williams. Jonathan Stewart and DeAngelo Williams both rushed for 1,000 yards back in 2009 for the Panthers. So thanks for taking part in this teammates quiz. Hopefully you got a few right. Hopefully you learned a few things, and I'll see you next time.